In this episode, we are going to be reviewing the film noir Repeat Performance from 1947. This was directed by Alfred L. Werker, and it starred Lewis Hayward, Joan Leslie, Virginia Field, Tom Conway, and Richard Basehart. This was a lost noir for many years until 2007, when it was rediscovered, I should say, by one of the TCM hosts, Eddie Muller. And we are going to be reviewing the quality of this film today. So stick around. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube video podcast where we explore movies from all over the world and talk about how those stories were told on film, as well as interviews with various industry professionals who work in film, television, and theater. If this is your first time here, or if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing. I want to welcome to the show Kendall Kruver, who is a writer and critic and the host of her podcast, Watching Classic Movies. Kendall, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
And as I was saying, I've been really enjoying your podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about what Watching Classic Movies is all about? I mean, it's right in the title, but is there something that you aim to communicate within each episode, or is it like an exploration of classic film in general? Or
I do just want to, well, I love something that Leonard Maltin says. I just want to talk to whoever is alive and interesting. And that is a driving factor for me. But the message that I want to put out is there's so many interesting facets to classic movies. Like maybe the time period is finite, but the things you can discover, the aspects that you can explore are endless. And
absolutely.
So I'm hoping to turn people on to new things about films and new films and stars at the same time.
And of course, you know, we're talking about film noir today. And of course, film noir is right during that, you know, the classic film period. So before we jump into Repeat Performance, I was curious because film noir, people have such a variety of definitions on what's a noir or not. I find often when I review a film, there are those occasional ones where I'll get comments saying this is not a noir or what, you know, and I love some of the fights, arguments and debates that break out over that. So I was curious, how do you define film noir?
Well, there's a certain amount of fatalism in film noir. It's often shadowy in form, as far as what you see, but I think it's also shadowy in its soul. So you could have something bright and colorful like Leave Her to Heaven, but that's still noir because it's shadowy in the soul.
Absolutely.
And I think that you can add in different genres like you do with Repeat Performance, where you've got fantasy in there and a little bit of melodrama, but there's still a certain fatalism to it that makes it kind of core noir to me. And I'm pretty flexible as far as what the definition is. I know that people are really comfortable with the overcoats and fog definition, like that's solid. But I do think kind of expanding your perception of how that mood works is really kind of rewarding and worth it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And when we were chatting, trying to figure out which film to discuss today, this was a film that you suggested, Repeat Performance, and I had never heard of it. And as you had said, this was like a lost noir for decades until 2007. Eddie Muller, one of the TCM hosts of Noir Alley, discovered it, and only 15 years ago, and they've restored it and released it onto a Blu-ray and DVD. That's only like a few years ago, I believe, right? The Blu-ray?
I reviewed that this year.
Right. So sorry, go ahead.
And it had been on TCM and it had been shown at festivals. But it was something that had been requested a lot. As far as the Film Noir, the fans of the Film Noir Foundation were requesting this film. It was, I think, on the top of the list. But they'd had a screening of the film, and Joan Leslie was alive, and she was a guest. And they were going to have a screening and a Q&A. And I guess the print was just dismal, just not screenable. So a collector kind of swooped in at the last minute with a 16 millimeter. So they got to have the screening. but they knew that they had to preserve it, you
Right.
know, once they realized how dismal the situation was. So that's what kind of got the ball rolling.
I'm surprised he was able to, here, because he had said on, I watched just earlier today on him talking about that on TCM. Like he said that the film wasn't delivered until the day of the screening, and then they were like, "Oh, we can't show it," and then they managed to get another one on the same day. I'm like, how did you do it? They must have called every single, anyone who owns a reel in their garage or something. It's like, how did you find it?
I mean, the more you learn about, festivals and these screenings like this, the more harrowing you realize it is. I mean, just access rights, it is not easy.
No.
And, whenever anybody has a criticism for something like that, I'm like, oh, honey.
Yeah.
It's amazing it happens. Yeah, it's a miracle, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's quite the discovery, because I really, really enjoyed it. And I was thinking this is kind of like a noir meets It's a Wonderful Life. And then it was funny because Eddie Muller said the same thing. Because it has this supernatural aspect to it where, actually, in case anyone hasn't seen it, I'll just give a brief synopsis here. According to our trusty friends at IMDb. So is on New Year's Eve, 1946. Sheila Page kills her husband, Barney. She wishes that she could relive 1946 and avoid the mistakes that she made throughout the year. Her wish comes true, but cheating fate proves more difficult than she anticipated. So, what is it about this film that you like? I mean, why is this a film that was worthy of discussion for you?
Oh, there's so many things. I mean, overall, it is such an unusual film because of its mixture of genres. Another description that I really like, I think it was from the Flicker Alley description, is it's a lot like the Twilight Zone.
Yes.
Like, what world am I in? And while film noir is very much rooted in human nature, reality, the hard knocks of life, the Twilight Zone is really just a play on those things. It's just a little wilder, but it's just a play on those things. And then I think that's what this movie has to offer, a kind of a mixture of those things. It shows you, how you can use fantasy to express that kind of reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I also just love the cast. It's a wonderful cast.
I thought the performances were great, and I must say I wasn't really familiar with anyone. I don't know if you were. I mean, I'm sure I've seen them in things, but they didn't stand out to me as someone I really knew. Anyone really, with the exception of the man who played William Williams, because I know him from La Strada, the Fellini film, which I love. But other than that, I didn't really know anyone.
And that was his debut role.
That's right.
Richard Basehart. That was his debut role, and it's just a remarkable performance.
Oh, yeah.
He came to the screen fully formed.
Yeah, and he was fantastic.
And here he's in the 40s doing this queer coded character. He's got to get it just right.
Mm-hmm.
Very different from the book. The book, the character is not William Williams, it's William and Mary, I think, and he's a cross-dresser, and it's a little more obvious who he is, but he's got to kind of show this without being too blatant about it. So it's an interesting performance, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually wanted to get into that character in a little bit, but I also, just since we're on the topic of the cast, the man who played Barney Page, Lewis Hayward, he struck me as like so much like Orson Welles. I don't know if that popped out to you. He just, the voice, the look, I don't know what it was about him that rang Wells for me, just the suave and the charm and the
I wouldn't have pegged it, but I see what you're seeing.
Yeah.
And some of it is the theatricality of his performance style.
Yeah, I think so.
He's one of those actors, I can't stand him. So I know he must be brilliant. I mean, he's just so good at playing these just odious characters. And it's one of those things where I can't give him enough credit because he makes me so darn mad, But yeah, he's a very good villain in this, and a very good. I think this is the first time I understood what a codependent relationship is.
Right.
Because you're thinking, why doesn't he leave her? But it's like, oh, but he kind of craves her idolizing him in some way. So that's really interesting.
Well, that was what was so fascinating about this film for me, because it centers around this relationship between Barney and Sheila, and it reminded me of A Star Is Born, the relationship between Sheila and Barney. We don't see their early part of the relationship, but Sheila talks about it later, was that she was the struggling actor and he was the successful playwright, and he helped her a great deal. And now she's the successful Broadway actress, and his career has gone downhill, and he's an alcohol, and he's gone deeper and deeper into alcoholism. So they took that relationship and explored it in a very noir and dark way. And at the same time, this whole the relationship between faith and whether, because we all have these moments where when things go wrong, we ask ourselves, oh, if only I had done this, and if only I had done that things would have been different. And here she has this chance to go back a year before on and redo the whole year and change what happened, so that that she doesn't kill her husband, and that he doesn't fall for another woman and have an affair and try to kill her and all these things. And so the question lies, like, if you do different things, can you change the course of your life? And is everything that happens in our life predetermined, or is it just what happened, and you can't change that? So I found that really, really fascinating. And I love that, there's no answer for that, but the film obviously explores it by basically saying, you can't change anything. And the only thing, like Richard Basehart, and at the end as William Williams, the only, everything that happened previously, when she redid her whole year, the exact same thing happened again, just some things were a little different.
And that's a great closing line.
I love that.
Like, well, we tricked her, but as long as the end result is that's pure noir.
That is pure noir. Absolutely. And I was really thinking about that afterwards, because you can't, when something happens, you can't change it, even if you had the chance to. But I think what also fascinated me was the relationship between Barney and Sheila, because I kept thinking, why would she want to even bother trying to rewrite what happened with this guy? Because he cheats on her, he lies to her, he tries to kill her, he's jealous of her. He's he's going further and further into alcoholism. But she, as she says, there's that scene where she's backstage in her dressing room, and she says to her, one of her friends there, we're our history, she doesn't say this exact words, but their history is so deep that and that's when she explains how much he helped her, and she was struggling, and the reason she became famous was be successful was because of him. And I found that interesting, because that's kind of not that, perhaps this is much darker, but people in relationships often will do things to hurt one another. And sure, sometimes people do split up, but sometimes they don't, because they're just painfully connected. And it's hard to just break that when the connection runs so deep. I was curious if that's what you felt.
Well, I think it, like I said before, it's a classic codependent relationship where it's a circular thing where they're fulfilling needs for each other. And for her, it's that she's so grateful to him for giving her start. Yes. She didn't understand that relationships have flux, life has flux, and you don't have to stay with him because he did this for you. It it's doing you wrong now, but it's because they've got that, the nature of their relationship is going around and around. I don't think she's going to get herself out of that cycle. And it took me a while to understand that, because it was frustrating to me. Like, no, she's not going to end up with Williams, but he's an example of a person who is caring and listens and is supportive. The same thing with Friday, who's played by Tom Conway, brother of George Sanders, by the way. So that might give you a connection there. But
Yes, I didn't. I only read that this morning. I didn't know that.
yeah. So again, it's a person who he might not be a love interest for her, but he's also demonstrating a man who she can rely on and who understands her. Whereas Barney doesn't at all, of course. It's kind of a thing where she was young, maybe he was young too. It seems like maybe he's a bit older there, and that they hadn't grown up yet. She hadn't grown up yet. And she doesn't seem to understand that she can grow out of this relationship just as she's, growing and maturing herself.
Well, I hadn't thought of that. That's an interesting point, this co-dependency, because yeah, she's like 22 years. I don't know if the character was 22. I know that the actor at this time was 22 when she did it, but you're right, because she almost feels Joan Leslie as Sheila, she almost feels guilty to leave him. She feels that she owes him. And I found that aspect of the film really, really fascinating. The only thing that perhaps, and I see why that didn't was rather vague for me, was the William Williams. They basically say that he was put into a mental institution over like anxiety. He begins to have this relationship with I suppose the sugar mama of the piece. Eloise Shaw she was great, played by Natalie Schaefer, who likes to fund various artists. I love again, I always love how the production code, got around the sexual themes. Clearly she's talking about, she says, well, I'll do it for you if you give me gratitude, wink, wink,
nice
right?
To me. Yeah.
And so, he accepts that. And so she funds his career. And then you find out that he goes into this mental institution over this vague answer. But of course, as you had mentioned in the book, was because he, as they called it back then, transvestite, that he was, either he was transgender or he was a cross-dresser. And so people then, and unfortunately, there are people even today who feel that, oh, well, you're clearly mentally ill. And so he's put into a mental institution as a result. So that, of course, makes much more sense. But obviously, they couldn't do that in the 40s. But I thought perhaps they would have come up with something that would have been more specific, a little more, that had some more realistic possibilities. I don't know if you felt that was rather vague on the part of the screenplay.
It was a little.
It didn't destroy the film or anything, but perhaps they just didn't know how else to get around that.
I think their hands were tied. Yeah. And they did have to change a lot. I haven't read the book. I only know what it contains. It turns out you can get it anywhere, which I wish I would have known when I first reviewed the disc, because I would love to read it. But you can get it like at Target. So summer reading.
There you go.
But they did switch a lot of things around for the film, so it's possible that some things were a little ill-formed, and also just that their hands were tied when they're talking about his gender fluidity and his identity and that sort of a thing. I think that it could have been a little gentleness around that. That would be my guess.
Yeah, but I still love the fact that the guy, that he breaks out of the mental institution and saves her at the end. I thought that was great.
What a friend.
Yeah. But it's because as you had said, they if a character was gay in a story, they classic Hollywood, they would always code. It was always coded, or it was just suggested. And I actually thought they were doing a similar thing with, as you mentioned, with John Friday, played by Tom Conway, because when they decide to do the play by Paula Costello, and she has, of course, now she's able to relive the years. So her plan is to make sure that this affair does not happen between her husband and Paula. And so she says to the director, John Friday, okay, just make sure you keep, I'll do the play, but make sure that Paula stays in London, where she's from, and doesn't come to New York. And of course, Barney gets around that, brings her to New York, because he says, that, oh, we need her, the play needs her, we need to work on the play. And then he says, well, it's also because John, there's some kind of an affair brewing between them. And you see that Sheila's like surprised, and then Barney says, I wrote down the exact line. He was like, oh, he can't be everyone's big brother anymore. And so he's the sort of a little like William Williams was that he was more sensitive, he was more looking out for her. I'm not saying that only gay men can be that way, because of course heterosexual men can too. I wondered at that time if that was sort of the suggestion. I don't know if that's what you thought.
I missed that. How many times have I seen this movie? I completely missed that. I could buy it.
I could be totally reading into it.
No, but it makes sense. It makes sense. Now I gotta rewatch it, man. I can watch it anytime too, so that's fine. I'm gonna do it. But yeah, that's a really interesting take.
Yeah, because and he really, like, his whole character is doing everything to protect her feelings, to the point where even on the opening of the play, he sends her flowers and puts Barney's name on it, because he knows that Barney's cheating on her. So he's trying to protect her feelings. And later on, when they have this part, like, she is under the assumption that John is with Paula. And then later on at that party, right when he falls off the orchestra, in the balcony, and becomes, paralyzed, briefly paralyzed, he says to her, oh, I didn't invite her. So I got the impression that he didn't invite Paula, John says to Sheila. So I got the impression that he found out what Barney did, that this lie, and that he sort of went along with it to say, okay, well, I'll make her think I'm dating Paula so she doesn't hear about the affair. So he really goes out of his way to. Now, you could also say maybe he's attracted to her. I don't know, because I don't think so, because that would have been an opportunity for him, right? To go in. So what was it about her that he was so protective, and why is he considered everyone's big brother? So that made me wonder. I was like, what was the suggestion? Yeah,
that's an interesting take. I mean, I do feel like he had a kind of an avuncular feeling for her, like he was protective. And that was probably something, a bit about the age difference, maybe a little bit about business too, about protecting, his star
for the sake of the play. Sure. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But the way he behaves, that he truly cares about her too. So it's a balance of those things. I do feel like that the two other men in her life, their full purpose is to protect her in this film, which is really interesting, because that's generally such a feminine role.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
And to have her be the center and kind of the masculine, role, it is another element of the film that really interests me.
Yeah, me too. I was really fascinated by that. And what I liked about Sheila was that, I couldn't help but laugh when she's like, if only I could relive this year, I would make sure this affair didn't happen, and so me and Barney would be happy. And so once she meets Paula at the New Year's party, she already knows who she is, so she's hostile immediately. She's tries to distance the two of them. And so her idea is to go to California. And I couldn't help but laugh when they're in California that you see Barney checking out all the women on the beach. And I actually thought he was just going to fall for someone else.
Yeah.
But what winds up happening is that the script that Paula wrote winds up getting to them, as we see. And so, of course, she knows that, I got to rewrite the past. I can't do this play because that's how the affair is going to brew. So her idea is to reject the play, but then her ambition gets the better of her, because she's like, she finds a way to still do the play as long as Frank, the director, can make sure that Paula stays in London, and it is never in New York, which of course we find, doesn't happen. So what I found interesting, and as someone who, because I'm an actor, and I have known people who have been in relationships and also worked creatively together and split up, and have sort of dance with the idea of still working with those people because it benefits them. And I thought that was really, really interesting and accurate, that she was like, well, I know Paula wrote this play and I hate her because she's going to, interfere with my marriage, but it's such a great play. So I don't know if that was something that popped out to you or not.
Well, the whole concept of the movie is kind of theatrical in a way, because they're rewriting history. It's like rewriting a play.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
as she says, we just need to rewrite Act 3.
yeah. And then it literally happens with the play, right? And I guess the thing is, like, you can rewrite and you can rewrite, but the show's going to go on in some respects, and that's just fate.
Mm-hmm.
Fate is the show, right?
Yeah.
And you're just going to be hardwired to do certain things. And yeah, she's not going to turn down this role. It's just too good, and she knows it. And no matter what she does to push fate in a different way, that rewrite is just the right way. And I think you must know this, being in dramatics, is that you will find the right way.
Yes.
To play a thing, or to reframe a thing. And once you find it, you can't let it go. Mm-hmm. That's just how it is. You're not going to be able to go back, once you kill your darlings and find the right thing, that's it.
Yeah, no, I that really interested me, because here she has this opportunity to change it, but then she, and I understand that. I don't mean that to judge her, because I do understand if she was like, well, let me see if I could just find a way to keep some things from last year, but finesse everything else. And you cannot control your life, right? I mean, you can only control certain things, but some decisions don't go as well as you wanted, or maybe you make the wrong decision when you thought you were making the right decision, and you cannot write your life like a play. I know Joseph L. Mankiewicz had this great line, or maybe it was Herman Mankiewicz's brother. He's like, life has a way of lousing up the script. And I think that is such a great, that is so accurate. No, but I really, really enjoyed it. I'm glad that you suggested it. Was there anything else about the film you wanted to bring up?
Well, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for Joan Leslie. It was really hard for her to distinguish herself. I mean, she was in diapers when she started performing. I think she was 2 when she did her first stage stuff. And she was a teen star with all these, horrifically older leading men. And she'd had some good roles, but nothing ever this juicy, because she was in a town where Stanwyck and Crawford and Davis were queens. Even like Ida Lupino, her co-star in The Hard Way, she did not have a way to top that. But that didn't mean she wasn't worth seeing and very good at what she could do. And I just think this was the perfect role for her to show what she was capable of doing. And it didn't really lead to much else. Not too long after that, she would get married, she would have twins, and she would do TV and mothering kind of back and forth. So this was kind of her big chance. And I really think it's her best performance. If not necessarily her best film, it's her best performance. So that's very special to me about that film.
I was just curious, can you, if you could talk about the Blu-ray a bit, how does it wind up looking?
So to see this Flicker Alley, release was just kind of stunning. The only thing that compares is there was a Warner Archive release of Out of the Past where I played it, and it was just like, immediately. And that's what this repeat performance release is to me, where it's just so gorgeous that I wasn't in the film for a couple of minutes because I was reveling at the difference. And it is definitely a testament to the importance of preservation, restoration, that we must take this very seriously because it's like a different film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure.
And
Yeah.
the thing about the release is just that it's got a lot of other elements in there that kind of educate around the film. One of the things that's really interesting about it is it's an Eagle Lion film, which, not one of the big ones. So not one of the ones that had all the theaters. So it was kind of that hampered its success from the beginning, that it couldn't have the wide release that, say, a Warner Brothers or an MGM film could have. And it was a very low budget film, which I don't think shows. I think they make their budget work.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I thought so.
And this is just what Joan Leslie was doing after her Warner Brothers contract. She sued to get out of that because she'd signed it when she was a teenager. So actually, she literally didn't sign it. It was her parents. So she sued to get out of there. And Warner Brothers, Jack Warner was very angry with her about that. So that's another thing that kind of hurt the Eagle Lion film, because he had tried to have her blacklisted basically for what she had done, and was angry that this company had taken her on. So that made it even harder for them to book it. But there's just little details like that are interesting in the set. I do think highly of Flicker Alley because they take it seriously. They curate it. It's like Criterion, if you're looking for an example, where it's a package and it's a little class, and it gives you the full understanding of the film, which really does improve the experience as much as it does stand on its own.
Wow. Yeah, I'll have to get a copy because I like I said, I really enjoyed it. So I want to see what the what the Blu-ray now looks like. So all these things that you're mentioning, are these all featurettes on the Blu-ray? Are there like little short documentaries and things like that?
Yeah, gosh, I think there's about 3 of them. Eddie Muller does an intro. Farron Smith Nim, who is this self-styled siren, does a video essay about Joan Leslie. And then Alan K. Rhodey, biographer, he does a little film about Eagle Lion. And then Nora Fiore, who I think some people know as the Nitrate Diva, does a commentary. And that woman knows everything about movies. So it's very good too. It's a nice set. And I think that it's so important to have these sets for the films that almost slip away.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get my copy. I was curious, just look, because I'm looking at your website as well. How long have you been writing and reviewing films and physical media releases?
Oh gosh, I think I started about 2008.
Oh wow, okay.
It's been a side thing for me. My profession is I do writing and editing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's definitely been a rich experience, and certainly has been more amazing than anything I could have ever dreamed of. I mean, when I started, I just wanted to write a few things, but then I realized that the reviewing new releases is important because that promotes appreciation of film, and just the more people who are watching these discs, the more money will go into preserving the film. So that's been kind of an overall goal for me. I think lately I've been much more interested in audio and video though. So doing a little more YouTube, doing the reels on Instagram, and of course the podcast, which has been a lot of fun. Just getting to talk to people who fascinate me and ask those questions that I've always wanted to ask.
And where's the best place for people to find your podcast and your website, social media handles? Where's the best place for people to go?
Watchingclassicmovies.com has links to all the social media, the podcast, all of that. I'm also on Twitter at Classic Movie Blog. It's Classic Movie BLG. It doesn't have an O in it. That's, kind of got some other links and stuff.
Okay, great. Cool. Well, I will leave the links in the description box below for where you can get in touch with Kendall and check out her website. And her wonderful show. As we were saying, we've had some of the same guests. So
only the most brilliant people, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Alicia Malone, Leonard Moulton, Christina. I was going to say Joan Harrison. Christina Lane.
I love that.
Who wrote the book on Joan Harrison. No, it's really, really great. Highly recommended. So I'll leave the links in the description box below for where you can check out Kendall's website and podcast. So Kendall, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate that you took the time to talk to me today and suggest checking out this film, because like I said, I hadn't seen it or heard of it. So thank you. So I hope that you can come again sometime.
Thank you so much. It was really a lot of fun to talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching and or listening. If you are currently listening to this on the audio version of my YouTube channel and you've run out of episodes to listen to, head over to the YouTube channel where every single episode that I have ever recorded can be found. youtube.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you are interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies. Patreon is bonus content that I create month in and month out, and it is based on polls that I put out at the beginning of every single month, which as a member, you will have access to vote on. So if you like my work and you're interested in supporting me over on Patreon, head over to the link for full details. And lastly, if this is your first time here on my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing if you haven't already done so by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the movies logo. You will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left in just a second. Just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes or when I go live. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you in the next episode.